Have you ever wondered why it's called Nightmare? Let's figure it out together. Also, if you're interested in folklore, this video might be for you. Hi, my name is Josie and I am an illustrator from Sweden, and I have this massive interest in folklore and folk creatures. I did a video on the huldra, or skogsrået, as it's commonly known in Sweden, and it was a lot of fun making that video, and I kind of want to make more videos like that. So here we go again with Maran, which is the origin of the word nightmare. It's a creature that visits in the night, causing bad sleep and bad dreams. Let's dive in. So yeah, I thought it'd be fun to do this from my bed because the nightmare, maybe it's a little bit overkill, but now, this creature obviously exists in several different variations, and is probably the most common creature in most cultures, which is a creature who visits in the night to scare you, to disturb your dreams, and keeps you from moving. It's been scientifically explained as sleep paralysis, but who knows? This creature in Swedish is called Mare, and I would say that the names in other Scandinavian countries are very close to that. Mare, Mare, Mara. Yeah, and it's etymologically connected to mare, as in the nightmare. And when I dove into the linguistics of how the word has the root meaning of the word, there's no sure answer of it, but there is a connection to mer in Swedish, which it translates to mare as in a female horse. So yeah, I already did a video about the huldra. At first glance, these creatures are very similar. The fact that the most well-known version of this creature is female, young, beautiful, alluring. The thing where it's either a beautiful woman or an ugly old lady, because of course it is, and is interested in intimate activities with the person it's visiting. But it's really interesting to also read that it could also be a man. I think the origin of this predates the name werewolf, but the male version of Mara has a lot of similarities to werewolves. The modern text that I read basically says that the male version of Mara is a werewolf. So it used that word specifically. The mare could also be a man or show itself in the form of a furry animal. Sometimes a cat, sometimes a dog, in a couple of cases even a bird, often an owl. So yeah, the word Mara does not just exist in the Swedish language today in the context of nightmare, but can also be used in Swedish as an alternate for the B word, someone who is a Mara or satmara. And something that is difficult can also be described as marit, kind of like you in English would say nightmarish. Oh, it's nightmarish. Marit. You know, it's these things that you don't really think about that you're using or that people are using until you dive into it. The stories are about a person who's asleep, feeling like it's suddenly difficult to breathe, as if someone's sitting on their chest and pushing down over their rib cage. The body would be paralyzed and it would be impossible to call for help. Today this is called sleep paralysis, but back in the day, this would be explained with this nightmare creature. So, who was this Mara creature? Could a normal person become a Mara? Maran was supposedly a jealous creature, much like skogsrået, the huldra, which I was talking about. A lovesick person with the ability to shapeshift. Either learning to shapeshift through their jealousy and lovesickness, or born that way. In some cases, a human's thoughts could hold such a power that gain power over its victim, as in the person that it had feelings for. It was really interesting diving into this because there's a lot of different ways that someone could become Mara, or the Mara was created through some kind of curse or witchcraft. I read somewhere women who in some kind of way tried to alleviate the pain in childbirth would then instead curse their child. So if they had a daughter, the daughter would become Mara, or if they had a son, he would become a werewolf. In these cases, during the daytime, the person would be just a normal person, and then at night, they would turn into this creature and no longer be necessarily in control of their actions. However, in the north, where I'm from, Maran is a a person slash shapeshifter, so a human with the ability to shift shape specifically and voluntarily to haunt people in the night or torment people. Several stories are talking about a person who, again, is lovesick, unable to get married, and this is often women. They're talking about spinsters, women who are too old to, like, their chance of marriage have passed them by, or they're ineligible in some kind of way and become Mara instead. You know, that kind of typical outcast of society is a demon type thing. And it says, they were longing for companionship and would therefore visit a person in the night to torment them. Sometimes it's said that pure jealousy was the reason behind Maran's attack. In the south of Sweden, there are several stories saying that Maran was the ghost or spirit of a woman who had never been married. It wasn't just humans that would be visited by this creature. It could happen to animals living on your land. Basically, Maran seems to have an obsession with straddling or riding trees, animals, and humans out of some kind of jealousy. If a person was ridden, riding. Yes, this is a recurring word used to describe Mara's wants and likes, but what does it actually mean? Honestly, it isn't really clarified anywhere. I tried to find a reason. I've accepted it kind of. I think the most common animal to be visited by a Mara was the horses. So people would commonly put wards on their stables to ensure that the horses were left alone. But some signs that your horses had been visited by Mara is that when you came into the stable in the morning, the horses were dripping with sweat and exhausted. And the horses would have, I'm completely blanking and translate isn't helping, but you know when your hair's messed up and you have knots in your hair? What's that called? This is the word in Swedish. So basically, yeah, the horses would have these knots in their hair, and they would call that marflätor or martuvor, which means mare braids or mare knots. And this was a sure sign that Maran had been visiting. So, fun fact, while I was reading, I found out that leading into the 17th century, these mare knots or mare braids actually became kind of fashionable in some circles. Maybe it was just Scandinavia, that's unclear. A lot of interesting shifts are happening during this time in art, politics, religion, philosophy, so why not wear signs of demonic visits, am I right? One big fan of this trend was apparently King Christian IV of Denmark. He's depicted with one at several points in his life, including this statue. Fun! While today he's mostly celebrated as a great king, people in his time thought of him as a disappointing drunk who undermined the Danish economy with the 30 Years' War. At least he was at the forefront of fashion. I found this really cool website, which is in Swedish. I would highly recommend going into Institutet för språk och folkminnen, which roughly translates to the Institute for Language and Cultural Remembrance. It's kind of difficult to translate, but like folklore, I guess. But basically, this website has a map where they've collected folklore stories from all over Sweden. You can zoom into an area and you can click and read about the different creatures that have been talked about in that area from first-hand accounts. So there's people who were born in the 19th century who then later were interviewed during the 20th century and talk about the way that people used to talk about these creatures and also how some people have experienced them and how these tales were used to describe common things in life. And I think that's really cool. And I just wanted to share because I really love, this isn't sponsored, obviously. It's just a cool website. If you speak Swedish, I also got a lot of the information that I'm talking about in this video. It's a public research institute. So the most common recurring story relating to Maran is about a man who is visited by her by night. She comes through the keyhole or cracks in the wall and she slips into the room, is able to get into bed by stepping into his shoes by his bed, sitting on his chest, making him unable to breathe, paralyzed, and having nightmares, creepy visions, unable to speak. The story goes, the man was expecting her and made sure to block all the cracks in the wall as well as the keyhole after she'd come into the room to see him. By doing this, he had captured her, and over time was able to domesticate her, and even marry her. The marriage was a happy one, but after several years, they had a disagreement. In his anger, he told her she was not as cocky as she had been when she came through the keyhole. And as he said so, he pointed to the hole and took out whatever he had used to block the hole. And so she quickly disappeared through the hole and was never seen again. Protection and wards. There's some common things that you might recognize if you've ever heard about planning your sleep routine and stuff like that. Things like not being too full when you're going to bed, because that could lure the Mara to visit. Two really common things about Maran is she likes to ride stuff, which sounds wrong, and I'm really curious about how that works. If it's a mode of transport, I don't know. And then the fact that she's not good at counting, but has to, when presented with a challenge, has to complete it to the point where you can ward off or be safe from Maran by presenting her with a mathematical problem. Or can you count all the words in this Bible, please? Oops, I dropped my hair. You're gonna have to count that now. But then there's also things like in some areas, she can only climb into bed through your shoes, stepping into your shoes. So either it's pointing your shoes away from the bed so that it's awkward for her to step into the shoes and then having to get into bed. That doesn't work. Even placing your shoes out in the room so that she is confused and has to step into the shoes rather than climbing into bed. There's some variations on that, which is interesting because I was reading about this creature in the West Indies, I think Jamaica, but also that there are versions of this creature in Louisiana, the south of the US. Obviously, the West Indies and the US have been influenced by European culture, in case you didn't know. And I'm guessing that this is also common outside of Scandinavia. Like I said, I tried to focus mostly on Sweden, so I can't really speak to the rest of Europe, but I feel like this is another of those common things. Like I mentioned, Maran could also ride a tree, and a sign that a tree had been ridden by Mara. You know that thing where you can see a cluster of bush or brush in a tree, almost like a crow's nest, but it grows that way? I haven't heard this, but it's called markvast. So you could take these clusters of wood and place them over the stables, ideally above the animal. And in that case, Maran would be more interested in riding the broom rather than the animal. And I feel like this might be what later leads into witches flying broomsticks. I mean, I'm not an expert and I haven't done the sufficient amount of research, but considering Maran is older than the witch hunt, and there's some similarities between the cursing people or being cursed or holding some kind of power, able to wield over other people, it feels like this is a very natural progression into the idea of a witch. Just a thought that I had reading this. I would have to read some more. Intuitively, I feel like it makes sense. It's a natural progression historically. I was so badly harassed by Maran once that I thought that I would perish. I had recently went to bed and was as awake as I am now. I came to see something woolly, almost like a skein, but it had feet. It jumped on my chest and my throat closed. I couldn't breathe. I felt like I was sinking and trying to come up for air. I had no energy to yell, and when I finally got rid of the bastard, I was drenched in sweat. They used to say that it was old hags and witches that sent the Mare on you. The Mare crosses and wooden branches would be good to place above doors and windows. And here's the thing, you had to carry this cluster of branches in a manner where you never crossed the road leading to church, or a road leading to church. She didn't like those kinds of things. That's Ragnar Nilsson, born in 1893. Wow, I have saved a lot of stories from first-hand accounts. Yet another way to get rid of Maran was to write it away, which I thought was interesting. Here's what you do. You cut your left pinky and you write in blood. Mara, 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 du vill här om natten fara, men antingen du vill till ditt hemvist fara, eller du vill till helvete fara, det får du vilket du helst behagar. And then you would cut again and write, så sant som Gud lever och min själ lever, så sant ska mitt hjärteblod vara vittne därpå. And then you would write in ink, i den heliga treenighetens namn. Amen. And this was actually told by a person who lived during the later half of the 19th century. Which again is pretty cool. And this is another first-hand account from a woman who was born in 1873 in Uppland. There was an old lady nearby my birth home in Husby, complained to this person's mother that Maran would terrorize her so badly at night. Maran would come flying in through the door, even if it was locked. Though this old lady didn't know who the person was, she thought it was the neighbor lady that came in and placed herself on this person's chest so that she couldn't breathe. So this is a pretty universal phenomenon, but what exactly is sleep paralysis? The way that sleep paralysis is explained, the way I understand it, when you sleep, your body, to preserve energy and to recalibrate, store memories, sort out the day's impressions and things like that, and for your safety, it sets the body into a state of paralysis. So like, depending on how deep your sleep is, you might be unable to move. So for people who walk in their sleep, there's something that is off with this paralysis state. And when it comes to sleep paralysis, you are in that deep sleep state, but you're conscious. You are mentally awake. Your body hasn't caught up to an awakened state. And so you might still be dreaming, hallucinating, shadows in the room, things that are actually not happening there. It is just that your consciousness has dipped in while you were, in fact, dreaming and sleeping. So because I'm a nerd for linguistics, I just wanted to look at some variations on the name as well as the connection to nightmare. Several different names throughout the country, meaning Sweden, and some examples are skratten, lillnisse, flåket, puken, puken, pöslingen, marmänniska, eller marhamn. Hamn is kind of an older version of that, of like shape-shifting to be a hamnskiftare. So that name, Marhamn, kind of informs the fact that it's a creature that is commonly shifting shape. This is Professor D.L. Ashleyman from University of Pittsburgh, who seems like he's retired from the university, but still does research on folklore, and he's written about the connection to nightmare. The mare in nightmare is not a female horse, but a mara, an Anglo-Saxon and Old Norse term for a demon that sat on a sleeper's chest, causing them to have bad dreams. In High German, the demon who causes bad dreams is most often called an alp. Dialect variants include the forms mara, mar, mart, mort, trud, drutte, and others. A mare-induced bad dream is called a nightmare in English, martred in Anglo-Saxon and Icelandic, Marerit in Danish, Marerit in Norwegian, Mardröm in Swedish, and Albdruk or Albtraum in German. I hope this was interesting. I hope this was enjoyable. Maybe you learned something. Do you have a version of this creature in your culture? If so, I would love to hear it. If you have any requests for future creatures for me to dive into, I would love that. I love reading, I love doing research, so if you're new here from the last couple of weeks, my channel recently had a bit of a bump. I film a few weeks in advance, and for me it's happening right now, and for you it's a few weeks away, and I just want to acknowledge that I'm really grateful for the support that I've been given. New subscribers that are willing to join me on my still learning the ropes YouTube creativity journey. More of this folklore stuff that I hope you're interested in, folklore/history, storytelling, and then there's more of the diving into artists in history and also my own creative journey, ways that I would like to develop my creative process and also how I'm applying it. So yeah, I think right now I'm kind of starting to figure out what I want to do, what videos are exciting for me to make, but it's going to take some time. And I'm just really happy that some of what I'm saying resonates with people. This is a really long-winded way of saying thank you, I guess. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your week, and I hope to see you back here soon. Take care. Maybe I should sit up more because this isn't working. Oh, hi. I didn't see you there. Hi. My name is Josie and I'm no. So what are some common... no. Have you ever wondered why it's called nightmare? Is it a horse that visits in the night? Or hopefully the sound is good and hopefully I look into the camera at least a couple of times. I made the executive decision to film in a not very bright room. Is that an aesthetic pile? I hope so. Let's hope that that's an aesthetic pile.